Welcome to Two Lit Ladies, the podcast. The Two Lit Ladies, Dr. Katie McKnight and Deanna Gallagher, are literacy experts and educators who specialize in developing reading, writing, and literacy skills for all students. Thank you for tuning in.
Podcast. This is Katie McKnight, and I am here with, of course, my partner in crime, Deanna Gallagher. Say hi to the masses, Deanna. Yeah. And then our good friend and colleague, Danny Brassell, is here. And Danny is an educator whom I have tremendous respect for. Wonderful guy. He's a nationally recognized speaker, top-selling author, trainer, coach, professor at a university, teacher, dad, friend. I don't know. Did I miss anything off the list? So
that's a lot to live up to. I don't know how to do that, Katie.
Yeah. And then, he's also authored, he's quite prolific. He's written over 50 articles for newspapers, magazines, and his work is featured in many prominent national publications like the LA Times, and he's published over 14 books at this point. And I love reading his work because, like me, it's about making it practical, closing that achievement gap. And recently he's been working more towards an international space as well and spreading all of his good work internationally. So I'd like to welcome Danny to our podcast, to joining us. And, one of the things that we talked about before we started recording was that you and I have been literacy educators for quite a few years, right? A couple of decades under our belt. And how have things changed? How is being a literacy educator from the start of your career to now, what is your evolution? What do you kind of observe as the key kinds of, what am I trying to say, points of focus, points of concentration right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Katie and Deanna. I really appreciate you having me on the cast. And thanks for starting off with such a miserable question, Katie, about how literacy's changed. I think maybe it's because I was a journalist before I was an educator. So I like to simplify things for people. And so really the guiding principle for me nowadays is a line from the movie Big with Tom Hanks back in the late 1980s, where he's at this meeting with the toy company and they are introducing this new toy where it turns from a building into a robot, and everybody's all gung-ho except for Tom Hanks, who's actually a kid. And the question he asks is, well, what's fun about that? And everybody looks at him like, well, this is supposed to be fun. But he's like, but it's not fun. Like if it would turned in, he's like, a building is lame. Why don't you make it into a bug and then a robot or something that can destroy buildings? And that's really the answer to your question, Katie, is that's where literacy instruction has gone in this country. Is it's gone from potentially something that could be a lifelong commitment for most kids to now it's just drudgery and test preparation. And so I'm so grateful to people like you and Deanna for being on the front lines trying to really kind of transform people's thinking to make literacy fun.
Mm-hmm. And so what would be, if a parent, teacher came up to you and said, hey, because I know one of your big messages is getting the joy back in learning. And they say, hey, Danny, I have to do this. I have to do that. I don't have time to think about this. I have so much pressure on me. What advice would you give them to bring the joy back into learning, the joy back into reading and literacy?
Yeah, I mean, who has time after they go shopping, watch the game on TV, have a couple of beers? I mean, who has time to spend any time with their kids? I challenge people on that. It's all a matter of priorities. And so the program that you kind of alluded to, Katie, that I created is called readbetterinSixty7steps.com. And it's a program we're finally starting to introduce it here in the United States, but we've been using it now in India and in Argentina with parents. I've worked for the last 25 years. You basically alluded to your listeners how old I am. I mean, at this point, you cut off my head and you can just count the rings. I've been around for a while. And
I've got more rings than you, though.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I do. I got a couple on you. Okay.
I've always worked with the teachers and the administrators in bringing joy back into education, but where my latest focus has been the last 10 years has really been working with the parents, because I think if you get all three of those players on the same page, that's how you really move mountains. And so the purpose of my program, and before I forget, I wanted to serve all of your listeners and you and Deanna. I want to make sure all of you get a complimentary copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. And so you can probably post it on the show notes or whatever. But if people don't want to click the link, all they have to do is go to Read, Lead, and Succeed.com, and they'll get a complimentary copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed, which I wrote it for a principal who didn't know how to engage his faculty. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. And so every week I give you a concept, I give you an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation that you can read in 5 minutes, and it demonstrates the same concept. And I'll also give you one positive motivational email a week to keep you in a positive mindset. There's a lot of negativity in society. I think we really overcomplicate a lot of things. And so when you were asking, so this is the long-winded answer to your very short question, which is how do I serve the parents? And so when I created the program, there's two numbers I want people to focus on. The numbers are 67 and 20. So the number 67, so why is it called Read Better in 67steps.com? Well, you'll hear a lot of self-help gurus, a lot of people that I have a lot of respect for, by the way, say that it takes 21 days to change a habit. And to those people, I always say, well, show me the research on that, because it's completely a bogus number. I actually know where they get the number from. It's from a great book written in 1960 by Maxwell Maltz called Psycho-Cybernetics. I recommend everybody read that book. But basically, in the preface to the book, Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and he says in the preface that it takes most of his patients about 21 days to get used to their new faces. Well, a lot of self-development, personal health gurus took that number and cited it as research. It's not research, it was just an observation. Well, back in 2009, researchers in England, because the only legitimate research has to come out of England, so researchers out of England found that it took anywhere from 18 to 254 days to change a habit, and the average was 66. Well, I don't like the number 66, and so I'm going to throw in a bonus day. So I created 67 days to create the habit. The reason that's an important number, Katie, is because let's say you're under the preconception that it takes 21 days to change a habit, and you're trying to lose weight, and so you follow a diet religiously for 21 days, and then you fall off the bandwagon after 21 days. Well, you blame yourself, and that's really wrong, because the research shows us it takes 3 times longer than that. I mean, the researchers, they found when it took anywhere from 18 to 254 days to change a habit. It depends on the habit. I mean, if you decide you're going to have a glass of water before breakfast every day, that's an easier habit than saying, I'm going to quit smoking. And so I think it's really important that people understand the research on this. It takes a while. And so when I created the program for getting people to work with their kids for 67 days, and basically, we find that really after about 40 days, most kids have become much more passionate about reading, and they're much more interested in reading. The other number I was telling you about was the number 20. And the reason that's an important number is we'll say Harvard did a study, because Harvard sounds very legitimate. So Harvard researchers, yeah, for some reason, if you say Harvard did the study, it sounds much more legitimate.
Yeah, everybody accepts it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it was actually out of your neighborhood. It was some really great researchers out of the University of Illinois back in the late 1980s, and they were looking at patterns of kids based on their test scores and what they did outside of school. And they found something which was kind of shocking. So they looked at the kids, how much time they spent outside of school reading for fun. And so they looked at the kids in the 20th percentile, so the lower level kids, and those kids averaged less than a minute a day of reading for fun, which that's not really surprising. That's why they're at the bottom of their class. But then the next number was kind of surprising. The kids in the 70th percentile, the average kids, they averaged 9.6 minutes a day outside of school reading for fun. 9.6 minutes. And that's when I'm doing a training for parents. All of a sudden, it gets very quiet in the room because they're like, wait a sec, you're telling me if I can get my kid to read for 10 minutes a day, he'll go from an F to a C? And I can say, well, basically, the research does show us that that's exactly correct. But here's the even bigger number that's kind of fascinating. The kids in the 90th percentile, near the top of the class, the A-level students, they average under 21 minutes a day. It's not 3 hours, it's not 1 hour, it's 20 minutes a day, basically. And so that's my entire program is showing parents how to find 20 minutes a day to read with their kids. And so a couple of examples just to serve your listeners that I give parents when I'm doing the trainings on the online program. I say, well, wait a sec. If you drive, if it takes 10 minutes to take your kid to school every day, so 10 minutes both ways, why don't you put a book on tape on while you're driving? You just took care of the 20 minutes that way. And listening to a book is just as good as reading it.
Absolutely.
Another example, I've always taught, and I know your heart is in this, I've always taught in under-resourced areas, a lot of inner-city areas, and a lot of parents will tell me they have nothing to read at home. And I say, oh, well, actually you do. President Bush Sr., over 25 years ago, signed a very important law in this country that said every single television set in America has to have closed captioning. I always recommend to parents, turn the closed captioning on your television. And people will say, well, wait a sec, if the show's in English and the subtitles are in English, what good does that do? And I think that's a fair point. And I like to counter it with another point. Here's the other point. Have you ever watched a show with subtitles and not looked at the subtitles? That's very difficult for your brain to do. Your brain is directed towards the text. And so there's actually research that supports this. Well, I'll give you my qualitative research and then I'll give you quantitative research. So the qualitative research is, I had a buddy who used to teach first grade, and the best reader he ever had was deaf. And he asked the parents at a parent conference, why is your son such a good reader? And they said closed captioning since birth. So that's the qualitative research. The quantitative research is if you look at reading test scores around the world, the more kids watch TV, what do you think happens to the reading score? Does it go up or does it go down the more they watch TV? Deanna, I'll let you jump in on this. What do you think? The more they watch TV, what do you think happens to the reading score? Does it go up or does it go down?
Well, I'm a bit of a biased answer here because I do require, and I'm thinking about non-native speakers and their acquisition of English and how many students I've taught over the years who have both come to their understanding of language through television and then augmented it through the use of closed captioning. So even though I'm going to go out there, I have a 50% chance of being right. I'm going to say it actually increases.
No, so it's completely wrong. You're completely wrong, Deanna. So, yeah. So, but I'm going to give it to you because you were talking about closed captioning. So I'm just saying, if you're just watching TV without closed captioning, every single country in the world, the reading scores go down except for one. The country with the highest reading scores in the world also watches the most TV in the world, and the answer is Finland. And here's the reason why. Finland makes really bad TV shows, and so they have to import Hogan's Heroes and Gilligan's Island and I Dream of Jeannie and Brady Bunch from America. And so then they have to close caption all of those TV shows. So the kids are reading all the time. So based on your answer, I will give you the credit because you were basing it on a closed captioning answer. And so it's really a basic, that's a basic strategy any parent can do. I'll give you one more tip in this 8-minute answer to a 30-second question.
But before you give that next tip to Danny, let me do a yes and for you. There's my improv background. Is that, we know too, especially with work with adolescents, because that's, of course, my wheelhouse, is that it really is about pages read. Bottom line, the more pages kids read, the better they get, period. And also that listening to a fluent adult read is really critical. And so that's not just little kids when we read to them, but I always say this, is that audio support actually is a way to develop fluency, right? So kids learn the cadence of reading and language, and especially as they get into more complex texts and to have models for that. So I always bring up my 16-year-old son who has autism. He's actually quite a voracious reader. He reads on his hour trip out to his school and then his hour bus ride back because he goes to a school for kids with special needs. And he is 16, but his independent reading level is about 7th grade. And he always uses audio support. And the great thing about Kindles now, or most e-readers, is that it's not a computer voice. It's actually somebody reading. It's actually a person who's reading, and then kids can follow along because the text is highlighted. And that's huge because, just like just like the student you mentioned who is deaf, having that accessibility. So I think that's really, really important for parents and also our colleagues to understand that listening to text is not cheating. It's actually one of the things that Richard Allington, really important literacy researcher, has found, that when kids listen to a fluent adult reader, that it contributes to their growth and achievement in reading. So if parents are supporting that in addition to what we're doing in school, it's just it's mind-boggling what could happen. The results are just exponential. So I just wanted to yes and you on that.
And I'll yes and you, but let's go, Deanna. Let Deanna talk. I'm sorry, Deanna.
That's all right. No. I'm going to yes and you with regard to some of the research that you're citing, and some of the justifications that you're putting out there, which are academic for what you've done. And we really value those things, having had great training in great university centers. But I'm also very pleased with the fact that you're boiling this down to something that's actually quite, on the one hand, common sense, and on the other hand, it's classical philosophy. You're talking about habits of mind, and you're talking about how to establish habits of mind. And with the advantages that we have, with all the technology that we have, with all of these ways that we can augment our students and our children's experience in order to make it more enticing, really what you're talking about with your 67 steps and with your 20s, and this is about repetition to develop a habit and an approach and a way of being that is a building of character. It's a building of intellectual character, and it's a building of just the growth of who you are as a human being. And I just think that that's sometimes lost on people who are looking for instant fixes, and we're promised so many instant fixes. But we have these moments, these series of moments that we string together with our kids, whether they're our students, whether we're lucky enough to have those strings of moments with our children, and we can actually see that growth take place. I really like the fact that you break it down in such a way that makes it possible to track and to be able to recognize when progress has been made, and to understand that you don't have to be taking this kind of formula and using it in a very purist way, that you can use what's around you, what's right in front of you, and be able to build those habits of mind. So that's my yes and.
Yeah.
I don't know if that gets me back to the fact that I blew the question.
But... You didn't blow the question, Deanna.
It was a setup question. I heard it.
It was. And you're hired, Deanna, because you can sell my product better than me, because it's exactly...
Well, you can thank Aristotle for that, actually.
Well, one of the
Let's
things...
Let's thank Aristotle, yeah.
No, at the very end, because every day, so basically for the program... Every day for 67 days, parents get a 5 to 7 minute video from me showing them a new tip on how to get their kid excited about reading. I don't teach people how to read. I teach people why to read. I think schools do a pretty good job of teaching the how, but they do a really poor job of teaching the why. And if we could engage a lot more kids in getting excited about reading, we could really have a much bigger impact. And that's what I always love. At the very end of the program, I have a video where I congratulate the parents who've done 67 days, and I guarantee your kid is not only reading more, but they're much more excited about reading, and they're definitely reading better. But the bonus is, at the end of 67 days, I'm like, you just spent 20 minutes a day with your kid, getting them excited about reading over 67 days. That's 1,440 minutes. Mm-hmm. How many of us, when we were kids, would have just died to have 20 minutes of individual attention from a parent or a loved one? I mean, that's the real gift that I'm giving people is time spent with their kids. And I read a Harvard study that showed that the average parent spends less than a minute a day per kid giving them individualized attention. And that's something that I want us all to think about where our priorities are and what can we do to really build that relationship with our kids. So, Deanna, you can work for me anytime. Work with me, don't work for me, but work with me. I think that both you and Katie, I feel like a Southern Baptist saying amen to everything that you're saying.
Yeah, birds of a feather. Yeah.
Well, you bring that up. Kate and I, we bring our own family backgrounds a lot into the work that we do. We're fortunate. We're both blessed. We have wonderful children, and we both come from families where, on the one hand, education was really prioritized and reading was prioritized. But I think we also came from families where our fathers and mothers were incredibly busy. Katie's mom was actually working full time as a teacher. My mother was taking care of 9 other children as well as myself.
Wow.
Would I have appreciated 10 minutes a day? Oh, absolutely. 10 minutes a week would have been memorable. I do remember very clearly the times when my mother or my father sat down to read with me. And so I agree with you absolutely. And you make time for it because it is something that stays with you. So what do you?
And it doesn't. Yeah, and let me add too is that we forget about that with older kids, and my fondest memories as a mom is when my two kids, my daughter now is 22, my son is 16, and we're just all hanging out on the couch, and my son's reading his Kindle with his headphones on and following along. My daughter's reading something, I'm reading something, and we are just sitting there being together, and we're all reading together. And that's really, and what I'm doing then is I'm modeling my reading too for my kids. So I'd like you to Danny, to tell us the other tip that you have, and then I want to share with our listeners Lazy Readers Club too, because I think that's such a huge resource for folks too. So if you could give us another great tip, we'd love to hear it.
So this is just a tip I use with my own children. And so I have this feeling that television is here to stay. And so my own kids, I have 3 children of my own, and they love watching television. And they know before the TV is on, the price of admission is they have to bring me something to read to them. That whether it's a picture book or it's a magazine article or a chapter from a book, they have to bring me something to read, and I read it, and then the TV goes on. It's just a habit. It's an easy habit to create in a kid, and so that's another tip to give to parents on just another way to get their kids getting those minutes in every single day. In terms of lazy readers, I'm so grateful that you, Katie, and you, Deanna, both love lazy readers. Well, so it's lazyreaders.com. It's a website. I created it back in 2003 because when I was teaching at the university, a lot of my students were always excited about the books I was recommending, and they couldn't write them down fast enough. And so our motto for lazyreaders.com is short books for busy people. Every month I give 10 book recommendations, 3 or 4 adult level books, 3 or 4 young adult level books, and 3 or 4 children's level books, all under 250 pages. So you have something you can read when you're stuck in a meeting or at the doctor's office. Because again, the research, and this is going on what you both have said, is the research is very clear on this. It doesn't really matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. I'm on an airplane at least once a week, and I cannot remember the last time I sat next to somebody who was enjoying Dostoevsky or Moliere or Maya Angelou. But I sit next to plenty of people reading People Magazine, USA Today, and 50 Shades of Grey. And that's fine. I've gotten so many little boys excited about reading by starting off with Cam Newton or Peyton Manning's football card, or with the sports page, or with a book about dinosaurs, or how to build a computer. You got to find out what a kid is interested in, and then design the entire reading program around that. And schools are exactly the opposite. What they do is they give the most boring possible passages that are. It's like they've done everything they can to find out what kids don't want, and then put it into a textbook that's mandated by the state. And that has to end, because we're really doing a disservice to a lot of kids.
Absolutely. And if I could just respond to that, what you said about the choice and the need to encourage choice. Katie and I talked about that in an earlier podcast, and I think it never it's worth repeating that children, particularly little boys, but little girls as well, are hunter-gatherers. They're looking for things that interest them, that they can use to create and to play and to imagine. And they are attracted to those things which they can use. And that is also true for adolescents as well. And I think that we are, again, so lucky that we live in a time that you can actually go and access so many of these materials and give them a test drive. And that's actually what I really like about your website, too. What I like about it is that you have a link. You describe your books briefly. You link them to Amazon. So let's just say I go to Amazon. I don't go to Amazon and it doesn't tell me that I must buy. There's nothing like that. It just shows me right to the page. And then if I want to go on Amazon and look inside and sample some pages, I can do that. So there is no hard sell. There's no sense of promotion of any particular text. It's more, geez, I thought this was really good. You might like it too, which is, of course, the best way we all get book recommendations.
Great. I love it, Deanna. You and I are two peas in a pod. My problem with going to places like Amazon and bookstores is I go in there for one thing and I wind up with 28 things.
Yeah, I do like being able to toggle back and forth. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And then, so what other, kind of like pearls of wisdom, would you like to send folks and parents about, I mean, I always say that the foundation, it's not just me, but it's also Thomas Jefferson, right? The foundation of a democratic society is an educated one. And we know that the most successful people are readers, and the importance of choice and reading to our kids and creating these cultures where reading is privileged, that it's important. And so what other kind of big ahas have you had on your journey? I know that you've been overseas and spreading 67 steps like in India and other countries. And what else do you kind of notice in the other countries where you've been promoting your work?
Well, that's a lot of different questions in one, Katie. The big pearl of wisdom I want to give people, and Deanna hit upon this, is choice. The importance of choice is, I was just working with a teacher, and she was all excited because her school has mandated a book that every kid in the elementary school is going to read. And I asked, well, why are you mandating one book? Why don't you just let every kid read whatever they want? Because for some reason, I think that a kindergartner might not have the same interest as a fifth grader. And I understand that the school was trying to do a great promotion. And I see the same thing in high schools, is where they have every kid wants to read a separate piece. And I'm not going to rip on John Knowles, even though it's one of my least favorite books ever written. But if a kid doesn't want to read a separate piece, instead they want to read a biography on Elon Musk, well, why am I denying that? I guarantee you, and I just read Ashley Vance's wonderful biography on Elon Musk. I guarantee you that book is written at a very high level, and it's actually a higher level than Separate Peace. Why is it that, and I don't want people to freak out and say I'm disparaging literature, because I'm not. I think Shakespeare is, and Abraham Lincoln was not an educated person. He had two books. He had the complete works of Shakespeare, and he had the Bible, and he read them religiously, and he could quote from both of them, no problem. And I think that's great. And I think that the way you get a person interested in reading that way is by finding out what they're interested in. I hated reading as a kid. I hated it. My dad's a librarian. I always hated. I never realized how many privileges I had until I was older. And when I started teaching in the inner city in under-resourced areas where I saw so many kids not only had no access to good reading materials, but they were being force-fed things that had nothing to do. I taught a lot of students that were Hispanic, Latino, and I could count on one hand how many characters in the books were either Hispanic or African American. And it was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I think that's really where we're failing more than anything. And it's something I'm not criticizing people. I'm saying this is an opportunity to change. Let's start figuring out, based on children's needs and interests and developed a program around them. You have a special needs son, Katie, but it drives me nuts when I hear that, because I guarantee you every kid has special needs. And it's our job to recognize the special needs in every single student.
Yep, yeah. All children are beautifully different in their own way, is what
Absolutely.
I would say. So to end our wonderful podcast, how about we end it like this and say and share with our listeners, what was your most recent read? And I can start it off. I just finished reading 2 days ago on a plane, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles Duhigg. And it's been out for about 4 years, and he's a journalist for the New York Times, and really goes into the psychology of why we do what we do in life and business, and why it is so challenging to change habits, and how you can alter cues that really kind of trigger these habits and rewards, and how you can alter those cues to change your habits and rewards. So I found it to be a wonderful book, and so much of what you were talking about too, Danny, about building these habits really truly resonated with me. So let's take your most recent read, Danny, and then Deanna's.
Okay. Well, the books that I'm reading right now with my kids is my youngest, Samantha's going to be in 4th grade. I've been reading, and I can't. This kills me. I can't remember the author, but it's Howl's Moving Castle. It's a movie we like, and there's actually a great book on it. It's a beautiful book.
Diana Wynne Jones.
Yeah, that's exactly right. With my son, who's going to be entering 7th grade, he's a big comic book reader, and so we've been reading a whole bunch of X-Men comic books recently. And then with my oldest, Kate, who's going to be entering high school, we've been going over To Kill a Mockingbird, which is my favorite book of all time. And me personally, I had just listened to a podcast with Dennis Waitley, who's a personal self-help development person, and I just was so impressed with his interview. I actually bought 10 of his books.
Oh my!
So I'm on about book number 4. A lot of them are very similar in the stories he's giving, but he's just a really nice guy that really has the right ideas about keeping a positive mindset and really serving others before yourself. So Dennis Waitley, WAITLEY, and his first name Dennis is with 1 N instead of 2. He's in that movie, The Secret, but he's really neat. I was very impressed by him. Deanna, what are you reading?
Oh well, this is kind of a funny bookends. I am reading to my 4-year-old the book Rabbit Hill, which is a text that I remember being read to me when I was young. I absolutely love it. It's Robert Lawson, I think. I'm visualizing in my mind if that's the right last name, but it's a childhood story that I remember so well. And ironically, the other thing that I'm reading right now is Practical Permaculture, which is which is all about designing my landscape in my yard in a way that's sustainable and uses the materials that I have right in front of me, and I guess in many ways generates interest in the same way I'm learning quite a lot about how my land is very much like a classroom, and what I put into it and what I take out of it is there's very much a rhythm to it, and the value of each individual kind of component of it is actually the secret to building long-term success. That sounds kind of corny, but it is. And it is very funny because the story Rabbit Hill is all about how the rabbits and all the little creatures can't wait for the new people to move into the house to plant everything that they need in their gardens that they can eat. And that's actually happening in my life as well. I seem to be planting things, and then other creatures seem to be enjoying them.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way of the world.
You got me wanting to read Watership Down again by Richard Adams.
Oh yeah, good book.
I read that with my kids, and we have rabbits, and so we are very fond of any and all anthropomorphic tales involving rabbits, and we are. It's such a joy to be able to take back and go back to the pieces that we enjoyed as it and to bring them to our own kids. And it's also a joy to discover things that our kids are reading that we never got to read. So that's another reason why I'm so thrilled about your website for lazy readers. It's already introduced me to a few books that are probably classics that I'd never heard about because I'm not the age that they were when they were YAF classics, I was already an adult.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Deanna.
Thank you. And then, I just want to add, I want to, since everybody was bringing in their kids and what they were reading with their kids, I feel obligated now to mention that my son and I are going through the whole, like everything that Haddix has written, Margaret Haddix. So we're plowing through all of those right now. And then my daughter just graduated from college. So she has now introduced me to the new Wonder Woman comic book series. So I'm actually, she's been feeding those to me, and we've been having some great discussions too, because I shared with her the oh gosh, now I'm blanking on the exact title. I think it's The Unknown Story of Wonder Woman, and and I introduced that to her about a year ago. So that was the catalyst for now that I'm reading comic books, which I've never really read before. So on that note, I don't know if this is so much Two Lit Ladies or if it's maybe like Nerd Fest, Nerd Lit Fest right now. But I want to thank our listeners, and I want to thank our guest, Danny, for being on with us. And you can catch him on his website. Which website is probably, you have several, so where's the best place to find everybody?
I have a zillion different websites, Katie.
I know.
The one I want people to go to so that they can get their complimentary copy of the book is to go to readleadandsucceed.com. You'll be able to download a complimentary copy of my ebook, and you'll get a positive message once a week, so at least you're getting one positive thing in your inbox once a week. And I always ended class, I'll do this with your listeners, I ended class the same way every day, no matter if I was teaching my little ones or my older ones. I always said, education is valuable, but it's execution that's priceless. Knowledge is not power. Only applied knowledge is power. Knowing what the right thing to do and doing the right thing are two different things. And so do yourself a favor, go to the website, get the ebook, listen to this podcast every week, become dedicated to being a better reader, because the more you read, the better you're going to read.
Yeah. What a great way to end our podcast today. So again, thank you so much. Lots of rich information. And here are the Two Lit Ladies. I'm Katie McKnight, and
I'm Deanna Gallagher.
And we'll catch you next time on another episode of Two Lit Ladies. Thanks.